Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Welcome back to another gun store vlog. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 steps a brand new first-time gun purchaser should follow in order to make the most informed purchasing decision that they can. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. Alright, as many of you guys know, I do own a gun store here in Westfield, Indiana, and we've been in business for about 8 years. And over that time, I have dealt with many different people, whether they are purchasing their first or their 5th or their 50th firearm. But undoubtedly, the type of customer I enjoy working with the most is the first-time buyer. This is generally a person's introduction into the Second Amendment community. They've taken the decision to take their personal responsibility into their own hands, which I have a huge amount of respect for. And I personally want to be there to make sure that they are getting off on the right foot, getting into something that they're going to use and enjoy, and most importantly, to fulfill the need that they are there to fulfill with that firearm. On the reverse side, as the consumer, you as the customer looking to purchase your first firearm, this is the most important firearm purchase you are going to be making. So it's very important you take your time, take the steps necessary to ensure that you are not only getting the best product, but you're also getting the best price and you're having the best experience along the way. Number 1 is do preliminary research. There are tons of resources out there, including YouTube, that have a ton of information on them. Now, when a first-time buyer comes into my store, I typically ask a series of questions to make sure that we're headed off in the right direction. And it's important you ask yourself these questions before going into the gun store, and you have a pretty good answer to these questions formulated in your mind. Number 1, and most importantly, is what do you want the firearm to do for you? What is the need you're looking to fulfill for that firearm? Are you looking at concealed carry? Are you looking at home defense? Range and recreation? Are you looking for a hunting firearm? Are you looking to get into competition? Are you looking to maybe get into skeet and trap shooting? Those are generally the categories I find most fit into. Now, it's very important to be very specific about which one you're looking to fulfill. A lot of people will say, I want the concealed carry, the home defense, and the range use firearm. Well, keep in mind, firearms are very specialized tools and they are built for an intended purpose. So something you might get for concealed carry may not be the best option if you're looking for something that's strictly going to be recreational. Something for home defenses may not be the best option for you for concealed carry. So most people will get 1 or 2 or even 3 firearms to fit in most of these categories. But what is the number 1 reason you want to fulfill? Let's just say you want something for concealed carry. Be sure to say, oh, look, I need a concealed carry firearm. And if you decide you want to be into concealed carry firearm, do some research on different concealed carry firearms. There are lots of demonstrations, reviews, comparisons of different things that fit that niche on YouTube and other places online. So go ahead and do a little bit of brushing up on the research. So when you go into the gun store for the first time, you're seeing some familiar firearms that you've heard or at least gotten a little bit of an introduction into, so you might have some familiarity and it won't be terribly overwhelming. The second question I ask is generally, what is your experience level? Have you gone to the range before, even if it was 5 years ago? Maybe you were in the military 20 years ago and that was the last time you were on a gun range. It's good to have an idea of what your experience level is, and if you remember what firearms you may have fired before, calibers, makes, models, size, anything that you can remember, to relay that to the gun store attendant to get some sort of fundamental basis for your past experience, things you liked, things you didn't like. That'll push the gun store attendant into the general direction of what might fit your comfort level the most. Now, if you've never ever fired a firearm before or ever been to a gun range before, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Although before making a purchase, I do recommend going to the range, getting some training, and knowing a little bit of a fundamental, having a little bit of a bedrock of understanding of different recoil impulses, different calibers, different gun sizes, and how they feel. That'll be very important before you go pick out a firearm, and we'll get into that topic in a little bit too. The third question I generally ask is, what is your basic budget? What is your price range? Firearms span a very large price range. It's generally, most first-time buyers, I recommend to stay within about the $500 to $600 range. That's going to cover most of your duty or service sidearms like Glocks, M&Ps, XDs, P320s, a lot of the Ruger series firearms. That's the general middle of the road, is between about $500 and $600, and what you should plan to expect to spend to get something that's good quality where you're not going overboard. Are there less expensive options if you're on a budget? Absolutely. So don't feel like if you're on a budget, you only have $200 or $300 to spend, don't feel bad. There are plenty of great firearms in that price range as well. So know your budget. That'll help the gun store attendant know what is sort of the bracket you're looking to stay in, and try and get you the best option within that budget. Okay, the second step to follow is get set up with an expert or somebody who knows a little bit about what they're talking about. Most everybody has that quintessential gun nut in their family, or if you're not in your family, you have a friend or a friend of a friend, but everybody knows somebody who is into firearms. These are good people to start talking with. You will find as you get ingrained in the gun community that people love to talk about their passion, their hobby, their sport, or their love of the Second Amendment, and people will be more than happy to share that knowledge with you, whether it's gun safety, education, handling, best practices for marksmanship and for target shooting. People are huge advocates for the brands that they love. So if you know somebody that's got 10 or 15 or 20 or even 5 different firearms, ask if you can go with them next time they go to the range, offer to pay for their ammunition if they will let you shoot their guns. This will be a great way to not only get somebody who you know and trust that knows firearms and can get you some inside information or at least some resources to point to in the right direction. They typically have gun stores that they like to frequent. They can get you recommendations to. But also, this is the perfect opportunity to get a little bit of experience on different gun sizes and different calibers. So when the gun store attendant asks you, what's your experience level, you can look back on that experience. And when they talk about recoil, when they talk about gun size, when they talk about muzzle flip, that'll be totally equatable to the experiences you had with that person. Also, know who your expert is in terms of what is really their familiarity with the different firearms on the market. I do have a lot of people who will come into my store and say, I'm a first-time gun buyer, but my uncle is a cop and he recommended I come in and get a Glock. Well, the Glock is maybe not necessarily the best firearm for you, and we'll get to that when we go through the different firearm options, but you have to be the one to pick up and feel that firearm and make sure it's comfortable. Just because somebody's in law enforcement or just because they were in the military, and you guys know I have a lot of respect for both, doesn't necessarily make them in and of itself a firearms expert. Now, you could have somebody who is in law enforcement who also is really into guns and has a big collection, has been collecting for 30 years. They're a great resource to talk to, but just by virtue of having been in law enforcement, remember, they're really qualified on the duty sidearms that they carry. They're not getting an overall broad education on the entire market at large. So again, no disrespect for anybody in law enforcement or the military, but be sure that you definitely are comfortable and know about the level of experience that that person has as they're making you recommendations. The third one is a follow-on, and that is know who you are buying from. That is the gun store that you choose to buy from or the online retailer. Do a little bit of research on them. Look at gun reviews and look at what other people's experiences are. There are a couple things to think about. Number one is sort of the legitimacy of the dealer you're dealing with. Are they working on commission? And are they fitting the niche or hitting the target market that you're looking to fulfill? A good example of this is here in my store, we don't do skeet and trap shooting. So if somebody comes in looking for a skeet or trap shotgun, we typically refer them to a competitor we have here locally who that is their focus. They're going to get better served and a better experience going to them because they will be talking to people who are far more knowledgeable than I on the subject, and they are going to have a very big selection for their first shotgun. So know if you're looking for something for competition, if you're looking for something for home defense. Are you going to a store, are you going to a store that's really dedicated to hunting, but you're looking for an AR-15 for like defense purposes? You know, you can still use it for varmint hunting, or maybe that was a bad example, but you want to make sure that the store you're going to is fitting the target that you're looking to fulfill, because not only are they going to have really good, knowledgeable people in that segment of the market, they're also going to have a really good selection and probably really good prices too. Now, another good question to ask, and this is not at all rude, is are you working on commission? You want to make sure that the incentive structure is there to fit your needs more than it is the gun store attendant or the gun store's needs. That doesn't necessarily mean that all people on commission are only concerned with their profit margin, but it is undeniable that that is a looming aspect in that interaction. So could there be a propensity to push you into a higher end purchase or to push you into a purchase you're not yet ready to make because of, you know, a need to get a higher paycheck or things like that? So again, there's nothing wrong inherently if the salesperson is on commission, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind and not necessarily a disqualifier from that gun store or gun store attendant. Also, going back to knowing somebody in your family who can make you recommendations. Most gun people know the gun stores and the gun store attendants. I have very personal relationships with a lot of my customers because I've been dealing with them for a long time. They make recommendations to their friends and family, which I really appreciate to me. So, a lot of people will say, so-and-so recommended that we come in. It gets us off on a great foot too, because I have a personal relationship with them. I want to make absolutely sure that you are well taken care of, because I know you're going to be talking about that experience with this other great customer that I have. So use that network to your advantage and make sure you're set up with the right outfit and the right dealer to get you into the gun you need. Number 4, and this is really important, is you've come into the gun store, you've decided what you want, you've talked with a friend or family member who's got you in the general right direction, you went into your gun store, you picked out a few firearms that are in your budget, you love how they feel, and that's really important, is to pick them up, make sure that they feel good to you, you've got a natural grip angle, you got good sight picture, you like them. The best thing to do is, if that's your first experience in shopping and you haven't tested them, go to a range that rents either those firearms or something similar, or find a friend or family member who might own one of those firearms and test it out. Okay, this is like purchasing a car without test driving it. There's a lot that you don't know about the firearm until you load a magazine and put some rounds down range. You don't know how that recoil impulse is going to feel to you. The common misconception I get from first-time buyers is the smaller the gun, the less recoil there's going to be. I think there's a lot of movies and TV shows play on that sort of misconception. So a lot of first-time buyers will come in and be like, well, I want that small gun because, I don't want anything crazy and powerful. And I usually say, well, it's actually that small pistol, and 9mm or 380 is going to have more recoil than this full size because there's less mass there to absorb that energy. So you don't want to get something that feels, oh, it's nice and small and it fits my hands, but then I go to the range and it's just impossible to hold on to. It's very important you get what is comfortable to you, both to carry and to handle and to fire, or you're going to leave it at home and not use it as much. So get some trigger time on the firearm before you pull the trigger, no pun intended, on the purchase. Now, most importantly, at the end of this is, do not rush the purchase. Do not purchase until you're ready to buy. Don't be pushed into a purchase you're not ready to make. You want to make sure, again, you've isolated down that you fit the need, that it's in your budget, that you've looked around and you made sure that you are getting the best price you can on that. You have test fired it. You've gotten recommendations from your friends. You want to make sure you do all of that before you make the purchase. If you rush into the purchase, most people end up, trust me, I'm here, I buy used guns, I hear it all the time. People rush into something that they weren't ready to purchase. They want to bring it back and trade it in for something else, or they just take it out, realize that they don't like it, they come back, trade it in on something else. It's costing yourself time and money and headache that you could be avoiding by just taking your time, not rushing, and slow through the process. Now, I do understand that there are some cases where there is a sort of an urgency to get a firearm. That's, somebody may have just, you had to place a restraining order on somebody, or somebody just threatened you and you need self-protection, things like that. I understand that there are those circumstances where you are going to be a little bit more hurried in your purchase decision. But if you have the time, take the time, make sure that you are getting the right thing to fit your needs, and I guarantee you that will be the best purchasing experience and lead into your best ownership experience as you get into your first firearm purchase. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you off with those thoughts. If you enjoyed, please let me know by hitting that like button. Please also consider subscribing to my channel and hit that bell notification button so you are aware when we are posting new content. I'm going to leave you guys off with that. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports and WeBuyGuns.com in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.